Ukraine has a speed problem. Its rapidly evolving army of interceptor drones has proven incredibly effective at countering Russia's slower-moving Shahed drones. Unfortunately, those same interceptors simply aren't quick enough to deal with swifter threats like jet-powered Geran 4s or Kh-101 cruise missiles. But that might be about to change, as Ukraine and Germany have now discovered a genius way to accelerate their interceptors and destroy even the fastest Russian drones. Meet the Apex Recordhunter. It's an experimental, battery-powered drone created by the German company Quantum Systems, which is headquartered in Bavaria but has offices around the world, and is one of the leading specialists in the development, design and production of small unmanned aircraft vehicles, or UAVs. Eager to push the boundaries of UAV technology, Quantum Systems' team of Next engineers created the Apex Recordhunter with one objective in mind: to break the world record for battery-powered aircraft speed. The record was set at 657.59 km per hour, 409 miles per hour, by South African brothers Luke and Mike Bell using their Peregrine V4 drone back in December 2025. On June 26, 2026, however, Quantum Systems' Apex Recordhunter went significantly faster, reaching a peak speed of 699 km per hour or 434 miles per hour during a period of straight and level flight. Since the test was carried out internally, without any representatives from the Guinness World Record team in attendance to monitor and validate the speed, Quantum Systems hasn't officially broken the record just yet. However, the company appears confident that it will be able to do so and is already in the process of preparing for official certification. What's more, its engineers strongly believe that their creation can go even faster. Senior prototyping engineer Robert Gardermin told the media that his team had already spent more than a year working on the Recordhunter, but has no plans to stop anytime soon. 699 km per hour is an incredible milestone, but it's only the beginning. We'll be back very soon to go even faster and make it official. But why does this matter for Ukraine? After all, the Apex Recordhunter isn't a military drone. It's a simple experimental product, a one-off UAV that was designed to go as fast as possible, not to drop bombs on enemy targets. Well, to understand the importance of the story from the Ukrainian perspective, you have to look past the headlines. It's not about the Recordhunter itself or the exact speed it managed to reach. It's about the technology behind it. It's about the fact that a team of engineers has managed to do something that's once seemed impossible, making a relatively simple, compact electric drone move almost as quickly as a cruise missile. And the story doesn't end there. For Ukraine, it's only just beginning. Because here's another important fact about Quantum Systems: it works extremely closely with Ukraine. In fact, it has its own Ukrainian subsidiary, WIY Drones, which is already looking at ways to integrate the same types of technology seen on the Apex Recordhunter into its own military UAVs, including pre-existing models like the Strela Interceptor, and those that are still in development or have just recently been released like the Jaeger, which uses a combined electric and rocket drive to reach altitudes of 4,000 meters in just 30 seconds. WIY Drones also intends to run its own record-breaking test attempts in the weeks and months to come, as it strives to make its drones go faster than ever before. Other drone companies across Ukraine are also working towards that very same goal, and to understand why, we have to look at one of the biggest problems facing Kyiv's forces today. Even though Russia has taken a serious beating in recent times, suffering numerous devastating strikes across the occupied territories and its own regions, including attacks on its oil refineries and military supply lines, it continues to retaliate with its own aerial strikes against Ukrainian targets. Both day and night, the Kremlin continues to launch massive swarms of drones and missile salvos over the border towards Ukrainian towns and cities. These attacks haven't really slowed down or eased off in any major way. In fact, Russia is arguably making its attacks more intense by using more advanced UAVs and greater quantities of high-speed missiles, as confirmed by Ukrainian Air Force Communications Directorate head Yuri Ikhnat in a July interview with United News. I wouldn't say that there are fewer of them. They're indeed focusing more on ballistic missiles now because they understand the problems we have with securing missiles for Ukraine. But they attack every night, and now during the daytime as well. When the enemy sets such a goal, drones can attack around the clock. Now, a July 2nd report by the Institute of the Study of War also found that Russia seemed to be shifting its focus towards faster aerial assets, like jet-powered drones. Russian forces may also have shifted manufacturing patterns, such as seeking to decentralize Shahed-type drone production or shifting to prioritize drone variants that may be more difficult to manufacture, such as drones with jet engines. This is likely a direct response to the fact that Ukraine has developed such an effective interceptor drone fleet, with models like the Skyfall P1 Sun and Wild Hornet Sting II able to seek and destroy Shahed-type drones in the air before they have a chance to get close to their intended targets. Realizing that many more of its basic drones were no longer as effective, Russia appears to have adjusted its approach. And unfortunately for Ukraine, it's working. Jet-powered drones like the Geran 4 typically cruise at speeds between 300 and 400 km per hour, or 186 and 248 miles per hour, but can accelerate all the way up to 500 km per hour, or 311 miles per hour when needed, thanks to their turbojet engines. That's simply too fast for many Ukrainian interceptors to cope with. The Sting II and P1 Sun, for example, have peak speeds of around 300 km per hour or 186 miles per hour. Russia's missiles also move at rapid speeds, starting from around 750 km per hour or 460 miles per hour for models like the KH-101 and KH-55. Ukraine's existing interceptor fleet stands almost zero chance of stopping these kinds of weapons, and the problems don't end there. Unfortunately, Kyiv's forces also have very limited numbers of the high-speed interceptor missiles they need to nullify Russia's fastest threats, like the US-made PAC-3 missiles used in Patriot batteries. Records show that around 620 of these missiles were made in 2025. And that's not just for Ukraine, it's for the whole world, and there are several countries in line to buy them, countries the likes of Germany, Japan and Poland. The US itself also likes to maintain a healthy stockpile of PAC-3 missiles for its own needs and operations, and it doesn't take long at all for countries to burn through these assets. Indeed, during the Iran war early in 2026, over 800 Patriots were used to defend Middle Eastern nations from Iranian attacks in a matter of days. Ukraine is facing an even bigger threat and far more intense attacks every day and night. There simply aren't enough Patriot missiles on the planet to help it defend itself. That's not hyperbole, it's fact. According to a detailed analysis carried out by Defense Express, even if the United States sent every single PAC-3 missile it makes directly to Ukraine, that still wouldn't be sufficient. Here's why. According to Ukraine's own intelligence data, Russia produces around 60 Iskander-M ballistic missiles, 40 ballistic missiles for its S-300 and S-400 systems, 10 Kinzhal ballistic missiles, and up to 3 Zircon hypersonic missiles every month. That's 113 assets that require Patriot-class interception to counter. Current PAC-3 production rates are approaching 60 units a month. It's just not enough. Russia is also leveling up its jet drone manufacture, with plans to produce around 500 Geran 4s each month, and Ukraine needs either Patriots or other high-end interceptor missiles if it wants to successfully stop them. And it's not just that these missiles are relatively scarce, but expensive too. PAC-3s cost several $1 million each. Other interceptors also routinely approach or pass the $1 million mark. Given their cost and scarcity, Ukraine can't afford to waste its interceptors or use them against low-priority, low-value targets. It has to find cheaper alternatives, but it has struggled to do so and has started to pay the price for those struggles. On July 7, for example, Russia fired 23 Iskander-M ballistic missiles and 6 high-speed Zircon and Onyx missiles at Ukraine in a massive overnight attack. Ukraine failed to intercept a single one of them. And this wasn't a one-off. It's part of a worrying trend that has seen Kyiv's forces struggle to cope with Moscow's aerial assaults. The technology from the Apex Recordhunter has the power to halt that trend and get Ukraine back on track. But before we explain how, you're watching The Military Show, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. On the surface, it appears that problems are mounting up for Ukraine. It's facing increasingly rapid threats from Russia, which are harder to counter. It's dealing with more intense attacks that can cause major casualties and widespread destruction. And its stocks of all-important interceptors are running perilously low. However, all of these problems can be largely resolved with just one thing: faster interceptors. Ukraine has already demonstrated how impactful interceptor drones can be. They're relatively cheap to make, easy to deploy, and remarkably effective against the right target. In March 2026, for example, Ukrainian interceptors downed more than 33,000 enemy UAVs, proving just how valuable and integral they had become to the country's defensive efforts. But in order to remain valuable and impactful, they need to remain relevant. They were extremely relevant when Russia relied so heavily on its Shahed 136 style drones, which can only reach peak speeds of around 185 km per hour or 115 miles per hour. Flying almost twice as fast, Ukraine's leading interceptors could easily take off and catch up with Shaheds that were already in motion, with pilots or onboard AI systems able to home in on their targets and take them out with ruthless efficiency. However, as Russia shifts towards faster-moving assets like Geran 4s, Ukraine interceptors are becoming less relevant. They're unable to catch up with these types of targets, and instead have to preempt their flight paths and take up perfect positions for head-on collisions if they want to intercept them. That's much harder, which is why many Geran 4s can easily bypass the likes of P1 Suns. But imagine if Ukraine's drones could go as fast as the Apex Recordhunter and approach speeds of 700 km an hour or 435 miles per hour. Suddenly, the entire equation shifts in Kyiv's favor. Taking out jet-powered drones would become almost as easy as wiping out regular Shaheds, as the interceptors would be able to catch up with them, maneuver around them, and move in for the kill at just the right angles to almost guarantee a successful elimination. And the benefits don't end there. Given that some Russian cruise missiles travel between 700 and 900 km per hour, it's not beyond the realm of possibility to suggest that high-speed interceptors could counteract these threats as well, especially if the technology can be taken even further, as quantum systems engineers believe. Interceptors wouldn't necessarily need to fly significantly faster than these missiles to intercept them. Since they're much larger than drones, they're easy to spot on radar systems. Ukraine could rely on its radar coverage to detect missiles in advance, then launch drones ahead of them, ready and waiting to collide with their targets. The challenge would then become one related to positioning, rather than speed, and if Ukraine could solve that, it could reach a point where it's reliably taking out multi-million-dollar cruise missiles using drones that cost a few thousand to make. Taking this concept further, if the technology improves to a reasonable degree, Ukraine could even eventually have interceptor drones that are fast and agile enough to take out the most rapid of enemy assets, fighter jets. Russia's best jets easily break the sound barrier, with the Su-57 able to reach a top speed of Mach 2, approximately 1,320 miles per hour or 2,135 kilometers per hour. That's far faster than the Apex Recordhunter, which simply wouldn't be fast enough to tail chase or catch up with a jet that's already traveling at supersonic speeds. But it's not impossible to imagine a scenario in which Ukraine could prepare small ambush swarms of interceptors in areas that jets are heading towards, relying on positioning and geometry to successfully strike them. That's unlikely to happen anytime soon with the current technology, but it's a potential long-term benefit. Thinking more short-term, however, it's easy to see how quantum systems technologies could continue to shape Ukraine's defense doctrine moving forward. Kyiv has already made clear that its focus has to be on affordability. It doesn't have the funds or resources to make missiles at the same rate as Russia, and it doesn't want to waste expensive assets taking out comparatively cheap drones. It understands that money is arguably the most important resource in this war, and it knows that its only way of winning is to maintain the cost-effective approach that has allowed it to survive this long, while also doing everything in its power to make the conflict as expensive as possible for the Kremlin. This is why Ukraine has always strived to find the cheapest possible ways to intercept the enemy's munitions, like using $1,000 interceptors to take out $25,000 Shaheds. The Recordhunter technology could be the key to take that strategy to the next level. It would allow Ukraine to not only counteract Russia's cheaper and slower drones, but also its more advanced jet-powered models, forcing the Kremlin's commanders back to the drawing board yet again as they continue to waste massive amounts of money on attacks that fail to yield the desired results. And every successful interception for Ukraine doesn't just mean that a Russian asset has been wasted. It means so much more. It means that lives have been saved, buildings have been prevented from turning to rubble, and important pieces of infrastructure that might have been destroyed will instead survive to see another day. Every interception using a cheap drone also represents one expensive missile that Ukraine didn't have to fire. And over time, those benefits all add up. The more Ukraine can use its interceptor army, the more missiles it'll be able to keep in store to deal with the biggest and deadliest threats, like ballistic missiles and fighter jets. This could in time give Kyiv's forces a little bit of breathing room, as they're able to extend the lifespan and effectiveness of their existing missile inventories and buy time until the next batch of PAC-3s, NASAMs or IRIS-Ts arrive from their allies. Russia, meanwhile, will yet again be left with an increasingly costly problem to solve. It's already spending more on its aerial attacks by shifting towards greater use of jet drones and missiles, and it's banking on these expensive bombardments being big enough and destructive enough to saturate Ukraine's air defenses, destroy its infrastructure, and deplete its missile stocks. Eventually, the Kremlin hopes that this tactic could be what wins the war. But if Ukraine can roll out high-speed interceptor drones in the near future, that hope will be shattered. At that point, Russia will suddenly have to go even further, developing even faster drones or using even more missiles if it wants to deal serious and lasting damage to its enemy. That means even more money spent. And with the Russian economy in an increasingly perilous position, there's only so far that President Vladimir Putin can push his country's finances before the whole system falls apart. Of course, there are a couple of caveats here. Firstly, and most importantly, the Recordhunter is only an experimental drone and wasn't designed with military applications in mind. Even if WIY Drones designers were given full freedom to work with this model, it will still take time and engineering efforts to integrate guidance systems, carry out payload tests, equip it with electronic warfare countermeasures and communication systems, and make all of the other changes that would be necessary to turn the Apex Recordhunter from a demonstrative prototype into an operational weapon. Real combat conditions are far more complex than controlled test flights too. Thus, the design team could find that the Recordhunter begins to lose some of its speed and agility as they begin to make their military modifications. In short, it's not like Ukraine can simply tack on warheads and begin mass production of these high-speed interceptors overnight. It'll take time. But the technology exists, and that's the most important part. Breaking the speed record was the first part of the challenge. The next step is to bring that same speed into the battlefield, and it'll be up to Quantum Systems and WIY Drones expert teams to make that happen. If they're successful, it's no exaggeration to say that they could change the face of this war forever, improving Ukraine's resilience against mass drone attacks, helping the country conserve its most expensive assets, and adding yet another fresh layer to Kyiv's extraordinary air defense architecture. And this is only one of the many ways in which Ukraine is leveling up its interceptor fleet. It recently unveiled the remarkable Zirka UAV, which has the ability to autonomously detect, track and destroy Russian Shahed drones with minimal human input, and you can learn more about it in this detailed video breakdown. Alternatively, check out this video to see how Ukraine's middle strike campaign is having a major impact in Crimea, cutting the Kremlin supply lines and forcing Russian residents and holiday makers to sprint for the exits as quickly as they can. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to the Military Show to stay up to date with the latest news and developments from the Russia-Ukraine war and other major conflicts from around the world.